All right, we got some attendees rolling in. Perfect. Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Thanks for
everybody.
joining us. Yeah, we got Cory Brown here from Simplesat and Pronto Marketing.
Hello.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're going to do a little bit of a longer intro here just to give some people time to roll in. And first of all, thanks for everybody for bearing with us with the switch from GoToWebinar to Zoom. For anybody who is hanging out in GoToWebinar, we're going to be directing them over here too. Just a little bit of a brief story behind that. Basically, we want to be like the cool guys like Huntress and others that are using Zoom. Aside from that, the real reason is we're having some issues with GoToWebinar with a recent customer, a recent feature release webinar, and decided that it's beyond time to switch. And we've been hearing lots of good things about Zoom. We've been trying this out this week and seen some good results so far. So hopefully you guys, that works for you too. A couple of notes about using Zoom though, for anyone who hasn't been in a Zoom webinar, things are basically the same as some webinar stuff that you've been used to, GoToWebinar and everything. The small difference is there's a Q&A button. There's also a chat feature too. And just want to make the point, feel free to dive in. You can chat amongst yourselves. You can chat tagging us, Cory and I. There is an option when you're chatting that you can direct your comments to the panelists or to all the attendees. But the thing is with the chat, we're not really going to be focused on that so much. What we're going to focus on is the Q&A button. So if you go down there, you can add your question. That's what Cory and I are really going to be paying attention to. So that way we're not trying to go through slides, monitor the chat, do the Q&A. So if you do have a question that you want us to definitely see, please put it in the Q&A. Speaking of Q&A, we're going to be answering questions just like our other webinars. We will have a section at the end purely dedicated to Q&A, but we're also going to be answering questions throughout. So we definitely want this to be kind of a conversational thing. Cory's got a lot of really cool stuff he's going to be going over. And if you have questions about how things work specifically, feel free to dive in and ask, and I'll direct them to that. What else can I tell you? So there's, this is being recorded. So of course, you'll be getting the recording along with the deck as soon as the webinar is finished. And for people who can't attend, we'll be sending out webinars too, or the recording as well. So with that, I think, Cory, you want to dive in?
Sure. Thanks for that introduction there. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great to
me.
me.
I assume if you can hear me okay, everyone can. Okay. So I'm Cory Brown, and I'm a co-founder at Pronto Marketing and Simplesat. So first I'll talk a little bit about Pronto. Pronto is mainly a website design management company, but also online marketing services, primarily for MSPs. And I started Pronto about 12 years ago with my dad. And he had been working for Microsoft for 13 years and saw this big opportunity with MSPs for how much they need marketing execution and stuff. So we decided to start that full time, and I joined him with that. And throughout working with Pronto, I wore a lot of different hats there. And I managed our support team, and I moved over to marketing for our internal marketing. And did that, and then managed our R&D team and a big group of developers. So throughout working there with Pronto, I kept noticing this kind of, I guess, as not being satisfied with the current solutions that like Satisfaction Solutions had. We've always used Zendesk, and we were never really happy with that. We wanted to improve our service, but not really sure where to start. Zendesk has just the good bad rating scale, and our satisfaction was consistently over 99%. And
Perfect.
It's like something to brag about, but I know that we were very far from 99% perfect. So it's kind of like we just didn't have the data that we actually needed to improve.
Right.
The NPS was always a chore and kind of a project to do and, launch and send out to people. And then when I was doing marketing stuff, the website testimonials is always hard, and reaching out to people, that's always a project, and case studies. Feel like you're nagging people when you're asking for referrals and reviews. Yeah, I know you know that kind of on the marketing side. And then I started managing all these developers, and I just realized how much value that developers can create. Like we could build anything. So it's kind of our chance to build what we felt was this need for Pronto. And for all of our MSP and other service businesses, clients that we have. So we started Simplesat with our mission just to ask the right question at the right place at the right time. You know, I think just a one click, one size fits all survey isn't good enough for all the different situations that we have and that you might have. Of course, make it fun and intuitive. We all know that surveys basically suck. Most of them do, and they're boring. And if you're surveying someone, you're kind of asking a favor from them. So you should probably, you know, make the process enjoyable and good for them. And then just take advantage of all these positive comments that you're getting and these moments that you know you have happy customers, and use that to your advantage for marketing. So then that's Simplesat, and then this is what we're working on now. It's been about 4 years in development. We've been live for 2 years. And Simplesat in a nutshell, for anybody who doesn't know, is we have customer surveys, all the reporting in the dashboard to see your satisfaction scores and stuff, notifications through email or API to get all your data in any place to keep a team updated, and some features to get reviews and testimonials and stuff. Here's an example of some of the fun rating icons we have for CSAT. We have animated thumbs and cats and clouds and stuff, trying to keep it fun and engaged for people. Does that make sense? Anything else I should cover there?
Yeah, I'll just say, as we dive into the presentation, I see a comment. There's you got a happy customer actually, so that's great. Who's joined? And yeah, I mean, basically the reason I was really excited to reach out to you and invite you on was we've been hearing good things about Simplesat specifically. And then more broadly, this is an area capturing customer feedback and actually making it actionable is something that we've been hearing from our customers, from our MSPs, and also seeing a lot of discussion in the MSP community. A lot of people who are really working on maturing their operations and fine-tuning, finding new opportunities to improve and also leverage this feedback for revenue. That's something that a lot of people are talking about. And this is something that you guys are directly thinking about all the time. So that's kind of, I think, segs us into what we're going to be talking about today.
Yep, absolutely. Do we want to do this poll?
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so quick poll for everybody just to get the temperature of the room. Okay, question number 1 first. Just wanted to get a sense, who all's using CSAT surveys right now? All right. A lot of responses coming in, and it looks like it's fluctuating a little bit, but it's basically 2/3 of the folks here are currently using it. We got about 1/3 of folks who aren't at the moment. And then let's go now. Yeah, so it's actually shifted over to kind of 50-50. So I think this is going to be an awesome opportunity. We're gonna, Cory's got a lot to say about this.
And then for NPS, is everyone here not know what NPS is? That's the Net Promoter Score, the question of how likely you are to recommend us to a friend or colleague on the 0 to 10 scale. I'm sure you've seen it in other industries like airlines or car rentals sort of stuff.
Yeah, and that's our second question. So anybody using NPS surveys? And yeah, so this is I'll go ahead and end this one. This is about 90% of people are not, and only 10%. Yeah. So yeah, so another good opportunity. And also, Cory, I mean, you got a lot to talk about in terms of for folks who may be kind of like, okay, we're not doing CSAT, let alone NPS. This sounds like a whole other thing to manage, and maybe that's more work. I'm sure you'll have a lot to talk about with that too. Yeah.
These poll results are totally consistent with what we see from our users or prospects that we talk to, that either you're trying to get CSAT going for the first time, or you're doing CSAT and you've heard about this NPS thing and you're thinking about getting it going, but you don't really know how to do it.
I'll just say anecdotally too, I mean, here internally at Ninja, big users of CSAT. We have a huge, a big support team, and they're doing lots of cool stuff with CSAT surveys. But NPS is something that we're not actively using either. It's something that it's on our radar. We want to get more involved with, but we're not using it either yet.
So I guess we don't have any slides here to talk about how to get started with it, but my advice there is just do it and just launch it. And, it's just one question that your customers get. So if anyone kind of feels like it's this thing that you have to set up and it's got to be this whole project, just kind of, I don't know, do it and then work from there.
And I think we'll see as we get into
Yeah.
some of these future slides too. I mean, you're showing concrete examples of how you guys are launching these surveys. And I think that'll make it more real for people too.
Right. Okay. So thanks everyone for answering that poll. That's really helpful. Kind of moving back here, what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about why you should care about customer satisfaction, getting value from this feedback. And this is what Jonathan was just talking about really making sure that the CSAT data that you have now is not noise. It's not just in one ear out the other, not just a bunch of unread emails. How do you really get data to improve your team and to improve relationship with your customers? And then how to take advantage of that feedback to actually generate more sales and revenue and marketing activity.
Yeah, and the Q&A, like we said, anytime, feel free to jump in with a question.
Okay, so first about why is customer satisfaction important, or why should you care about this? And well, the answer is because it's important. And it's, of course, it's way cheaper to keep existing customers than it is to get new ones. I'm sure we all know how much money we spend on sales and commissions and marketing and all of this sort of things. Word of mouth, not only is it satisfying just to get customers that way because you know that you're doing a good job, but it's also efficient and way cheaper than advertising or commissions or something like that. And the loyal customers, which is what NPS basically gauges as customer loyalty, is loyal or satisfied customers are more likely to recommend your business and say good things about you than other ones.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll jump in here and just add that as with managed services and the transition over into everything focused on MRR, when you kind of take a page from the SaaS world, the software as a service world, and there the mantra is retention. You want to try to get to reduce your churn every chance you get. And it's all about exactly what you just said. Customer acquisition costs are high. It's much cheaper to retain your customers and focus on churn, and lowering that churn rate is a huge thing, a huge mantra for SaaS companies. So I think a big, if you look at that world and kind of see what the top players in the SaaS world are doing, there's huge customer success efforts, huge customer satisfaction efforts. And so that's kind of the stuff that's driving. We're seeing this now being adopted more and more by larger, more successful MSPs as well.
Yeah, that's a good point about thinking it from a SaaS angle, that actually from Pronto, this churn is becoming more of a reality for us. We have over 1,500 active clients now, where I guess our attrition percentage has been consistent through the years, but just as you grow, you have more people canceling, and it becomes, the more you grow, it becomes an uphill battle almost every month to just like fill the hole that from canceled customers. So
yeah,
super important. Yeah.
One additional stat I'll add really quickly before we move on is, I mean, you see these numbers that are kind of emphasizing what we're talking about, the value of it. I also came across prolific blogger Neil Patel. He's the co-founder of Crazy Egg and Kiss Metrics. And he was on the record saying that once they implemented NPS, he attributed that to having a direct 30% decrease in the return rate. So really had a big impact for them. And you see a lot of other stories with success stories like that too.
Cool.
Here we have a quick question. I think this is something we'll get to a little bit later, but you could chime in too. So it says, other than publishing comments on our website, do you have suggestions on how to leverage the positive feedback? This is from Jeffrey Marks. Thanks for the question, Jeffrey.
Yes, and I kind of had some slides about this near the end. Other than publishing on your website, so we'll talk a little bit about how you can use that moment to ask for a positive review. Just like link them directly to a Google or Facebook page or something. And also once you get that you can set up some automations in your system where once you get a positive review, then maybe a few days later, you send them an email asking for a review or referral or a case study, something like that. So it's either taking advantage of that exact moment when you have their attention, you know they're happy, or basically getting a list of recently satisfied customers and reaching out to them in some way.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got some cool examples in the slides ahead. So we'll definitely come back around to that. All right, so here it is. Here's the our quadrant.
This is the getting most out of your customer feedback framework, which is a work in progress that started out as we were building this, planning this webinar. And a lot of this originally came from Jonathan, who had this feedback from your customers about not wanting to have this CSAT noise, try to get more feedback from it. And at the same time, internally, we were using this quadrant when we were building some new reporting features that we released last December. And we were using this quadrant to talk about like the different use cases about, why would someone use this feature, or why was you need one or the other. So kind of like what area are we working on? So our kind of main areas here are high level. This is like zooming out and your 30,000 foot view of your satisfaction score or your long-term trends, or maybe leaderboards over a long period of time. And then zooming in is looking at specific feedback. So you actually have a piece of feedback linked with a ticket with the customer name and company and team member and all that data. And you can either zoom in with the client to kind of respond to them and close the loop, or zoom in internally to work on some improvement stuff. And for these next few slides, we'll talk about each one of these areas with examples.
Yeah, this is a cool way, as we were talking about, how are we going to convey some of these concepts and what you should be looking at, why things are important in the different examples. I thought this was a really cool way to kind of visualize things and get this concept through. It's a good framework to be thinking about when you're thinking about customer satisfaction, because that can mean a few different things. And the use cases are different, right? Like Cory mentioned, there's you can look at your customer satisfaction scores, and in terms of making it actionable, there's things you can do where you're reviewing it internally. There's the things that you're doing with the client. So I think this is a really cool way to kind of organize things.
And still a work in progress. So I'd love to hear everybody's feedback as well, and any questions or feedback you have. So let's kind of jump into it here. First, we'll kind of just go around the clock here and for these quadrants. So high level internal means about looking at your top level KPIs and working on those internally within your company to improve, to meet your longer term goals and improve your company kind of long term there. So why is this important? That if you set goals, if you don't set a goal, then you're probably not going to improve. And setting those goals gives your team a measure and a baseline to work toward. Over time, as you gather this data, you can figure out your own company's baseline and set goals that are aspirational but also achievable. Like NPS for different companies or different industries can like totally vary. So it's good to know what's like industry standard, but it's also just good to know what is your company's score and try to improve that over time.
That's a great point. I mean, because even in myself doing research on this topic, I'm looking for benchmarks too, and it's really hard to find something that's specific to MSPs, and then the industry overall data. Like you said, I mean, it's benchmarks are fine; they can be kind of useful, I guess, but way more beneficial to, like you were mentioning at the top of the thing. One of the benefits of getting started with this, of collecting CSAT data or NPS data, is that you develop that baseline for yourself. And so then once you're able to get the temperature of where you're operating today, now you're able to set actionable goals on it.
Yeah, good point. Oh, sorry, went the wrong direction here. So some examples here. This is a real worksheet that Pronto was using at the beginning of 2019. And we were there's this book Traction that we were kind of reading at the time. So we're like, let's just go through the exercise. but this is the real worksheet that we were working on. And you can see here that how NPS is one of our goals for the year. And so like, that's just how important it is to a service business like Pronto that's been using NPS for years. And so setting that goal, we have a monthly scorecard. This is just a scorecard template, but Pronto is a scorecard. I'm sure a lot of you have scorecards where you're measuring revenue and profit and ERC and marketing spend and things like that. But we put NPS right top line with those other top level KPIs on our scorecards. So we review that every month with our directors, and that's a great opportunity to look at how the company's health is doing, and also see if we're meeting our goals, or if we're not meeting the goals, why. And it's always a good discussion about that. Also, here's a few slides that I just got these screen grabs direct from a Pronto presentation that we did in December, just a few months ago, kind of a year-end review. So it's kind of like, here's how we started the year, and here's how we ended the year. And this shows our NPS over a 2-year period. And you can see here too how the score kind of fluctuates a little bit, and there's kind of different stories to be told if you're looking on a quarterly basis, or if you're looking at a yearly basis, or even over 2 years, the trend's up. So it's like, it's just really good as just a conversation that we keep having with our team and our company about how important service is and where we are now. And definitely we have a lot of room to improve. So kind of just making that transparent to everybody.
Yeah, and you're just having that source of truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just anecdotal. It's not just kind of based on feeling and assumptions.
Yep.
And then too, I mean, even if you see scores going down, that's obviously a good thing that you're getting that insight, right? Way better to have the data and not be operating blind.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you can actually take some action, dive into it, dig into it.
So some takeaways here.
Yeah, this is something like just from what I'm hearing from our discussions in this, and then I think how maybe it can apply to MSPs specifically. Just that last point, right? I mean, what measured improves. If you're not collecting data, you're kind of operating on basically just your anecdotal insights. So having that source of truth can be really important. We talked about setting your baseline. That allows you to then try to improve on that and monitor when you're dipping below what that is. Measuring your progress on a monthly scorecard. That monthly cadence, Cory, I mean, I don't know if you want to say anything more to that. Seems like a good, there's an element here as we talk about the next slide when we get into the weeds where you're viewing smaller interactions more regularly, but the monthly thing has worked out for you guys? Yeah,
definitely. And at Pronto, it's in our scorecard that we kind of review with the directors or our leadership team. And I just kind of thinking about this with Simplesat, we're a much smaller team, and we use Basecamp for communication, and we use their the messages, their heartbeats, and we do once a month like a customer heartbeat that includes how requests from our team, if it has been busy, how's our response time, but NPS is always a big part of that customer heartbeat as well. And that's in the template. So that there's a monthly cadence there that we send that to everyone, our developers, our marketing team. They get to see NPS. They see reactions to that and how we're tracking that. So
that's interesting. So this is this kind of goes right into a question that we got from Kyle Schaefer, and that's he says, "What are some benefits and risks of sharing employee-specific scoring?" And I don't know if this applies. Maybe you can shed some insight whether that would imply more to NPS, certainly CSAT. I mean, I know internally with Ninja, we have our support reps have their own CSAT scores. And so is that something that you guys do? Are you kind of like praising, naming and shaming there? Are there pros and cons?
So with Simplesat, we do NPS, and which is not employee or agent specific.
Right.
And basically all of our negative NPS comments are just about the product and what we're missing, what features we're missing. So it's actually really great to share all of that with our developers. It's just so obvious, like, we need feature A, where you are missing feature A, like build this, please. So it's just like, it didn't come from me, it's just come from our customers. I can definitely see about employee specific, how it's kind of like the thing about giving feedback, where if you have good feedback about someone, you should do it publicly. And if you have bad feedback or criticism, you should do it kind of privately in a one-on-one setting. So, I mean, we have all of our feedback at Pronto going into a Slack channel, and there's like with like managers and our support team in there, I think there's like 40 people in that channel. If there's negative feedback, it's there for everybody to see, but we don't really drill down on it. Like what happened here? Hey, John, tell me what happened.
Right.
So then that would probably be a time for the manager to work directly with that person, or just kind of work with the agent and say, okay, how are we going to deal with this? How are we going to go back to the customer? But it is kind of just out. It is transparent though. And it's like, we know that people make boo-boos and you screw up, and actually once you're posted in that Slack channel, you don't want to screw up again. I don't want to say it's like about fear, but it's like,
well, yeah, definitely. I mean, I see a correlation here, a connection with, having an internal sales team. I don't know if, I know that's kind of a lesser thing with a lot of MSPs until you get to a larger size. But when you have a team of SDRs or salespeople, a lot of times you'll have dashboards out and you'll see who's kind of in the lead, and you can kind of promote some healthy competition there. And actually internally in Ninja too, I mean, with our CSAT scores, we do show and highlight and praise, to your point, the positive praise becomes public. We praise the specific support reps who have the best scores. But it is kind of out there in terms of who's not doing as well. To your point, though, I think it's not going into a lot of detail and addressing kind of feedback on a public channel like Slack or even in front of everyone. I don't think that's something that is going to get you some good results.
Right. And we have, I mean, I guess it varies per industry and per company too. We have some of our users that want us to have even more granular user permissions. So you could only see your own feedback when you log in, or only see feedback from a certain survey or stuff like that. But I guess we're more on the side of being transparent. It's kind of up to you. But
before we move on, just one last point I'll make is something that came up when you were going over these takeaways. I think it's important to point out. So I think a lot of people here are probably measuring the things with your text, response time, all those things that are basically how quick are tickets being closed, things like that. But what's missing here, and what the hole that CSAT and NPS scores can plug, is the qualitative stuff. So yeah, you may be closing tickets fast, but how are your clients actually feeling about that process? It's a huge part of it.
And it's, and it's kind of like there's a good question here from Isaac too. I can see in the Q&A about when is a good time to offer NPS. And I think if you combine NPS and CSAT, it's a really good way to get the overall health of your customer satisfaction of your business. And where CSAT is more of attached to tickets and a specific interaction. And it's really just about, like a customer can be really happy with the agent, but unhappy with your company, or the other way around, love your company, but just got a really bad agent. So it's really about kind of just, how is that interaction? You kind of know that you're buttoned up in that area.
That's a really great point.
And NPS is more about, measuring the general sentiment that they have about your company. And we recommend to offer NPS quarterly to all customers. So it's not after an interaction, and it's not about people who are just active in your help desk. It's all active customers that you want to survey.
And for the MSP world, then if you're doing quarterly business reviews, I mean, this is kind of a great thing to attach to that then. In addition to showing reports, maybe collecting that data before, so you're able to then go into that meeting and showcase your NPS in addition to the CSAT stuff. But yeah, I mean, excellent point about the interactions versus the sentiment about your company. I mean, you may have techs getting really good feedback about specific tickets that they're closing, and then the customer churns and you get blindsided. And it's because if you were doing NPS, you may have gotten a kind of an early warning sign about that.
Yep. Yeah. And like, you could be totally happy with text, but maybe your price is too high and there's a value problem, or, unhappy with the services that you cancel or something like that. So I was working with one of our customers just the other day, and they're an MSP using ConnectWise, and they have two separate NPS surveys, one for decision makers and one for end users, and they segment out users that way. So that's one strategy I see one of our larger MSPs doing.
Yeah, I mean that's great too, because then you're getting, I mean, those are two
Mhm.
very different personas and two very different people who are interacting with your services in a different way.
Right.
I can see how that's definitely valuable.
Yeah, and Simplesat, we have integrations with Autotask and ConnectWise and Infusionsoft and Intercom to sync customer lists. So you can just set a survey on autopilot once you have your list synced, and then it syncs with whatever data you have in ConnectWise or Autotask or whatever. So if you can send an audience rule to send out to active customers or send out to contact type is decision maker or something like that. So
That's awesome.
yeah, that's what. Yeah, and some people do it after support interactions. Some of our users do it after projects or something. So could be, I mean, there's no kind of rules there, but generally CSAT for tickets, NPS for the quarterly thing. All right, moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Okay, high level client facing. So this is about your high level scores, but dealing with these, speaking to your customers and sharing them with customers. And this is especially big for MSPs that are, or actually I guess any high touch, service-based business that is presenting reports to your clients, either in the form of QBRs or automated reports or something. And this is really something where, kind of like we were talking about before, it's not just about one person's bias or anecdotal feedback or one comment that the owner heard that service sucks or it's great or something. You can present data. Here's some examples here of like reports from Simplesat that can be generated for a QBR, where you can filter in just for a specific company and see the satisfaction for that company for a 90 days or whatever period of time, see the trend over time, the ratings that came in, leaderboards for both team members and customers. And this is like the truth that you can share with them. And you can share both these high level views, and then this kind of bleeds into the next quadrant, but also zooming in on specific reviews. That's really the context and the reason behind the score here. So it kind of paints the whole picture here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that even beyond the kind of general, like, people love us, there's some cool things you can do in a QBR context where, we just got through Windows 7 and Server 2008 end of life, for example, and there's lots of projects last year that are based around that. If you have a major project that you went through, and you can tie some of this data to that, and then you're putting things in context. Like, we just did a huge overhaul with some of your systems, and look at the customer satisfaction scores we got from that, or following that. And you can show some before and after things. Once you start collecting that data and you show trends, to your point, you're able to tell stories. And really the big value that this brings is you're bringing data to back it up. It's not just you saying it anecdotally.
Yeah. And if you have negative, and then you have something to talk about in your next QBR that you fixed the problem, or, what you're going to do next time. So
yeah. And I mean, you can see, I don't know if you want to dig into it. Yeah, definitely. I don't know if you want to dig into that here per se, but I know that you're working on just released some new feature with the product where you're enabling some interesting tagging too. And that's something where, talking with some one of our larger MSP customers, they were really interested in how can they look at not just their overall CSAT numbers and NPS, but attaching it to certain, going back to your point about the decision makers, attaching it to certain types of customers and certain types of events, certain types of service too, because that way that's going to be even more actionable for them.
Yeah. So we're kind of doing an overhaul of our feedback section at the moment in Simplesat. These features will be ready early March, so just a few weeks. But tagging will be a big part of that, where you can tag it for kind of workflow things, needs follow-up, or we already reviewed it, but also you can use tagging for the reason of the feedback. And it's the reason for good or the reason for critical negative. So it could be about service, it could be about response time, quality. And you can do this now by exporting feedback and kind of manually doing it in a spreadsheet. And I've done it a few times with Pronto's feedback, and it's really insightful once you just kind of can show to the team how clear it is about is response rates our biggest issue, or is it quality, or what do people love the most about us? So yeah, those are coming soon to Simplesat.
We have a comment from Steve Zoberg who's saying they check at the beginning of a significant project and then a week or two after its completion.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Also at the beginning of a UAT process and at the end. So yeah, exactly. Kind of say it's that great before and after story. Then you're able to get.
Yeah. Yeah. And that reminds me at Pronto, we do a NPS after website launch and then throughout the life cycle. And NPS is usually higher after website launch than 2 years later. It's kind of your honeymoon phase.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Getting in, but that's something that we should know and be aware of it. Don't let just the things.
Well, and that point too. I mean, then you know that right after you launch a website, it's when you have to get that referral or get that feedback, the case study and everything. Before we move on, I guess here's another question from Jeffrey Marks. So I'll just read it out loud. I don't know if everybody can see it or not. For CSAT, we seem to be having a hard time getting negative feedback where I know there have been some negative interactions. How do we encourage submissions on both positive feedback from clients? In addition, we also seem to get feedback from the same people consistently. Yeah, that's a great point. How do you make this something where people aren't just checking the box and being like, yeah, sure, it's great?
Yeah. So one solution to that is if you feel like you're having a hard time getting negative feedback, this is something that I wanted to solve with Pronto that Zendesk only had the good, bad scale. If you introduce more scales to your CSAT, it's more granular and there's more of a chance that someone will kind of click the middle or the kind of good option, rather than it's kind of too harsh to say like just bad, good or bad. So if you introduce more scales, people are more likely, even if it's like, so let's say you have a 5-scale system, 4 is even still different than 5, and you can measure that, which agents got 4s versus which agents got 5. Let's see, another suggestion here could be that I think a lot of the times people don't want to give negative feedback if they know it's connected with an agent. Like, you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. And I've noticed that in our NPS feedback, our Pronto customers are way more critical than they are in CSAT. Like CSAT, they're so nice. Great job. I love you. Love your team. Great response time. And then the NPS, it's like, you guys suck. Yeah.
The cold truth.
So, yes, because it's not connected with, that agent that you just worked with. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings. So it's kind of just an example of asking the right question at the right time, or kind of asking questions in a different way. Like, I think if you go to a restaurant and the server asks you at the end, how is everything? You go, it was great.
Right.
That's every time. But if the owner talked to you later and you were having a good discussion, you would have said like something, the food was too salty or it was too cold or something. So it's kind of like there's different times that you can ask it. And that's the point of kind of using different channels and mediums or frequencies to try to ask the question right at that right moment.
Yeah. And let's because we're going to get into a few more examples of that as we keep going. But there was a second part to the question too, in terms of trouble getting negative feedback or honest feedback. And then the issue of getting the same people over and over and over again. How do you get net new people to be actually responding? And I think that's probably addressed in some of the things you're going to be talking about too.
Yeah. And kind of, I guess NPS again would be the answer for that. Like we see the same thing as well, where just some people are super active in the help desk, and that's just normal. But NPS, you might get different responses than the people that are really active. So. Any other things we should touch on that? Or does that answer your question, Jeffrey? At least to some extent.
Yeah, and as we wait for him to comment on that too, I mean, I think we will get into a couple other ideas in terms of the workflows that Cory's got. He'll show you.
Okay,
cool.
Here's just an example. I'm sure a lot of people here know about BrightGauge. Simplesat has a BrightGauge integration. It's a dashboard tool that's focused on MSPs. You could be using Power BI or Tableau or any of those tools. But BrightGauge has like a feature to do automated reports to internally or externally. So here's kind of like what Simplesat looks like once it's in bright gauge, and you could schedule this to go out to your customers once a week or once a month or something like that. So just another example of kind of the high level stats that you could be sharing with customers.
Right.
So yeah, and it's just, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, Cory. I was just going to say, to wrap all that up, because we're bouncing around a bit, but to go back on the high level client facing thing. So, what were your big takeaways here?
So I guess just all about, demonstrating your value and the ROI that you're presenting. And it's not, different people might have different opinions, just kind of like Jeffrey's question. There might be one person that's super active in the help desk that has an opinion of your company, good or bad. And the owner might have a completely different opinion. They might think that you're too expensive or, looking to switch or something like that. So presenting this data just kind of shows like, here's the single source of the truth and what's going on. I think it can really help just as you being a trusted advisor and not just being a kind of a transactional company and, building a relationship, whether if the feedback is harsh or constructive, it means that you care and that you're invested in improving it.
Yeah.
So that's why all this stuff would be important.
I think there's something too with, if you go in to report it to a company, to a QBR meeting, or you're providing this in the email, whatever it is, showing that you have access to this level of data, it just shows that you're buttoned up. I mean, the perception of you as a company, it's far different. It shows that you got your act together and that you're actually paying attention to this stuff. That alone is valuable. And then, when it comes back to making that argument of you're constantly having to demonstrate, this is why you guys are paying us, having this type of data in addition to the number of, it just adds a whole nother element beyond, here's the number of tickets that we closed,
And it shows you care.
Right.
So, that you're just asking. So kind of moving on here, zoomed in client facing. So this is about dealing with individual feedback in response to customers. So we've already touched on this a lot about showing individual feedback in a QBR or something. The other point here is about closing the loop. So when you get especially negative feedback, how you deal with that and how you respond to the customer and basically, tie up any loose ends there. I'm sure you guys, if anyone knows where if you've left negative feedback somewhere and you never heard back from them, it's like, is anyone even listening? It's like, it almost did more harm than good. So, and you can really turn a bad situation into a good one by, letting them know you care, following up and, sticking with it to resolve the issue.
You guys actually have an interesting, I believe you blogged about this recently. You've got some interesting stats around that, don't you?
There's this concept called the service recovery paradox, which is it's like a thing. We didn't invent it. It's not like one of these stupid frameworks we're working on today. It's a real thing someone else invented. But it's basically when there's a service failure and you recover from it, then a client's perception of your can actually be better than it would have been before. I noticed this at Pronto years ago. We had some downtime issues, which is, really bad if you're hosting websites, but we really stuck with it and, shifted our agent schedules to be available and chatting with people and recovering from it. And you get a lot of great comments after that, people saying like, wow, thanks. This is why I chose you guys. I'm really happy, I'll stick with you. And then we solved it. So it's kind of an example of something like that. Here's kind of like an example here of just a super simple example of closing the loop where at Simplesat, we use Intercom for our ticketing system, but this could be with Autotask or ConnectWise or Zendesk or any system where basically a client leaves feedback, it goes to Simplesat or whatever feedback system you use. Through Zapier, a Zap, we have it automatically create a conversation here, which is like essentially a ticket. And this is really great for us because it inserts this into our existing workflow. So it's not something like another tool we need to go to like, oh yeah, and check feedback for the day and respond to it. It's like we have 10 responses to go through and this is one of them that we have to do. So it's like, it just inserts it into the workflow and we take all of our feedback really seriously. Here's one. Like I was saying, feedback are about features. This one of our users was wanting to have a better way to get the IP address from feedback. They suspected their agents were cheating and they want to get the, the IP address. And we actually have this features coming in this latest release we're doing in March. But here's like an example of a response that we send to them, and we ask them about, tell them that we're working on it and sharing some things that we're working on. And the cool thing about NPS is that this customer is going to get the email every 3 months, and this was a 5, and now we just have, a lot of room for improvement here. And it's just like, we just know that we have this culture now that we do this every time. We ask what happened. We try to solve their problem if we can. And this super important for any service business too.
For sure. And this kind of ties into, we got another comment question from Steve. Thanks again, Steve. Are there agent options anyone is using that allows any end user at any time to rate the environment and their end user experience, not necessarily tied to a person or a ticket? I mean, this sounds like NPS, right? But I'm curious, agent options, Steve, do you mean something that's kind of like you're actually installing on their machine and they're able to input stuff every now and then? Oh, let's see. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure in that regard.
Yeah, so this has come up a few times with some of our users where we have an option where we can link just to the first question of a survey. And some of our MSPs have installed like an icon in the dock station of their clients' computers.
Nice.
And it's a button that says leave feedback. And at any time they can go in and leave feedback.
And that's going to, that feedback is, it could be anything. It could be an NPS survey or it could be something else.
Yes. Yeah. Could be NPS. So it's basically at any time you could say how likely you are to recommend us, or any time you could ask, how are we doing?
Right.
How do you feel? Something like that.
Nice.
And that's a great question and a great example there. And all of those too could just go back into this workflow that would create a ticket or a task somewhere, and you'd know that you'd be able to follow up on that and start a conversation with the client.
So how are they doing that again?
So it's basically in Simplesat, you can just get a link to the survey. And then once you have, it's just a URL, a link. And then once you have that link, I don't actually know exactly how they do it, but they said they can create this thing in a dock icon that launches the link.
I wonder if there's something we can do too on just with Ninja's side of it. I mean, you got your sister icon and everything. So Steve, why don't we get back to you on that? I'm going to make a note to myself to follow up with you, and others too. I mean, if you want to know answers to that question, maybe just everyone should have the invite from me. Like, shoot me an email, ping me a response. I can try to get a response for people.
Great question. So some takeaways here. Sharing these individual feedback, helps provide context to your QBRs. Really recommend you to set up workflows and automations to make this automatic and not having to be, an additional task or a chore for your team. It's just the same as responding to feedback or responding to a ticket. And kind of know that this feedback is an opportunity to start a new conversation. I really enjoy NPS feedback for working on Simplesat, because we're still relatively a startup and I'm focused on the product side. So any feedback I have, good or bad, I really love dealing with passionate, unhappy customers, just because they care, they have an opinion,
right.
And I can know, so how would the product be different for you to be satisfied? So I really love those conversations, and it's great for your team to stay engaged in those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I have too much to add there, and just want to be mindful of time. So we're coming up on
right.
on 9 o'clock, but we're up for staying a little bit after as we run along here. But do want to make sure we covered. There's some really cool stuff, especially we've got questions about leveraging those moments that you're mentioning. Okay, so you're getting feedback, you got positive ones. Now, how can you capitalize on that and get referrals and get reviews and things like that? So there's some cool stuff we want to get to with that.
Okay, so I'll just kind of wrap this up, this kind of section, so we can get to that. This last point here is about zooming in on the internal feedback. And I think this is really important for you to build your culture and build a service culture and a culture of accountability. And if you have NPS goals or CSAT goals, you're going to achieve it by doing a lot of little things right. And by having your team, be able to, whether it's like a 5 whys analysis or retrospective or whatever it is, but using this as a process. Here's an example of a Pronto Trello board that we have, where when we get detractor or neutral NPS responses, it creates a card here, and we have these workflows to go and see where we are, who sent a message and the client responded, and kind of what the status is after that.
How, Cory, just for context there, I know we're trying to breeze through things, but how big is the support team there for you guys?
We have like 45 agents in Zendesk.
Okay.
Overall, we have about 140 employees.
Right.
And so like maybe like 45 customer facing.
So imagine, I mean, once you get to that level, having things like this is going to be even more critical. But I can see how having something like this at a smaller level can still be useful.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it was years ago doing the Pronto when I still needed it. So
cool.
It just becomes more and more important. Here's our like a Slack channel that we have, CSAT feedback coming in here, actually NPS and CSAT. So this is an opportunity when we get positive feedback that we can, celebrate these wins and say, hooray, good job. And if it's negative, not to be too harsh, kind of maybe deal with that on the side. Here are kind of the examples here. We have a 4-scale CSAT that Pronto's using. So here's a 3 out of 4 and a 4 out of 4. So there is kind of like a difference of if you want to be getting more feedback or encouraging your customers to be more critical.
Going back to your point a little bit about setting up these systems too, I mean, even if you're a small team now, and this seems like potentially overkill, I mean, if your site is to become a larger operation, it's just like putting in the work with your RMM and your PSA, right? Like you have to build this stuff in place, and once you do, you're going to be glad you did. Once you get to the point where you really need it when you're trying to scale up.
Yep. Yeah. Dabs, absolutely. In Simplesat, we're a small team, but we're like setting all this up now, and it's just infrastructure and workflows you're building that kind of investing.
And better do it when you're,
future.
When you don't have that mass overload.
Here's just kind of a quick showing a new feature that we have where like within Simplesat, you can click on any individual stat, any of these things, and then you can launch some drill down to see individual feedback.
It's very cool.
I've noticed this is really helpful. Like I really wanted this feature personally, where it's like you see some negative stat and you just like, what is that one? What is this? So that kind of helps as you're just trying to gain insight and explore the dashboard. You can kind of see different stats. So
very cool. Yeah. And I mean, maybe we can go through this quickly too, but basically just kind of reiterating that the purpose of the quadrant, and there's value in taking that 20,000 foot view. And there's certain things you can look at to get that overall trends. Yeah, there we go. But then obviously there's going to be value in being able to zoom in and look at each individual piece and figuring out what are the levers that you need to pull to have an impact on the larger trends.
So I hope that was helpful. Now we can talk about the fun stuff or the sexy stuff about kind of using this feedback to generate more revenue and referrals and stuff.
Yeah, and so John Hayes, this section's for you, buddy. This is for NPS. Has anyone had a best practice for asking for referrals from the response? As in, we get a 10, then turn around and actively ask that survey responder, thanks for the survey. So who do you know we could talk to? Yeah.
So we have some examples about that right here. Here's one from Pronto, and both of these are, and then the other one's from Simplesat. And Pronto, we're using Pipedrive now, but we were using Infusionsoft, and we had an integration there. It was a Zap that when you get feedback, it updates the customer with their latest NPS score. And there's this campaign in Infusionsoft that sends this email a few days after from a salesperson letting them know about a referral program and thanking them for the review.
And so Infusionsoft, that's an email marketing platform?
Oh, yes. It's they were bought by this company Keep, but kind of a CRM email marketing.
Gotcha.
Tool. Yeah.
Okay.
And
so you have the email there. So that was triggered by positive feedback, and now you're offering them the referral, and you've got $100 for that.
Right. And then This is from the NPS feedback. So it's saying, how likely are you to recommend Pronto? And someone says very likely. And then we send them this email. Okay, then refer us.
I love the offer too. I mean, if you think
Uh-huh.
about it, what's the value of a customer if you get one of those? Whatever your average, contract value, that could be a huge thing.
Yeah.
Giving out an offer for that can absolutely make sense.
Yeah, and this offer too has worked for us well, where like you give and you get too. So it's not just like you're referring someone for money. It's like
It's not just a
you're
bribe.
hooking up your
Yeah.
friend as well.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and then for Simplesat, because we're more of a SaaS product focused, where reviews are really big for us. So I have this email going out from me, if from a 9 or a 10 NPS score, and basically asking for a review here.
I mean, just anecdotally from us, I mean, we had a huge campaign. I think it's still ongoing. Some of the people on this webinar may have gotten emails from us asking for exactly this: G2 crowd reviews and some other platforms as well. And having the ability, if we had been tracking NPS and been able to do this instead of just like sending out a mass email, which has been, we definitely got some respondents and thankful for all those. But I mean, this is just a much smarter, I would imagine, more effective way to do it.
Yep.
And that doesn't have to be G2 crowd. I mean, that can be for an MSP, like if you're trying to drive up just your Google reviews or whatever it is.
And then kind of more about reviews. Here's another trick here. This is a basically a screenshot from a Simplesat survey, where on the thank you page, we can display different content, whether it's a positive or negative review. So if it's a positive review, you're going to want to funnel them to go leave a review in Google, or in Simplesat's case, we link to G2. So like, here's what it looked like. You send feedback, and then it says this thing, thanks, leave the Google review. And we set this up for Pronto around when we launched in 2018. And our Pronto marketing team wrote this blog post a few months ago. And I actually had no idea. And our marketing guy was showing me this, that it's like, holy crap, look at this data.
Yeah.
That just, it was like this little thing that we did. I didn't even know that it was going to be that impactful. Like, so this little thing that we did has just this impact of just, it's on autopilot now, that someone leaves a great review and just, okay, click here, leave the Google review. So I mean, definitely recommend doing something like this.
Yeah, and the power there is, I mean, the automation. I mean, if not having to do this stuff manually, because then it becomes one of those things where you just don't have time for it, you forget, it becomes a chore. But setting up automation, I mean, that's amazing. Actually, can we go back, Cory, to the previous slide? There was something I didn't notice that John had asked, and that's so back to this example with the offer for the referral. So when people do click that button, what would they go to?
I actually don't know exactly where this button goes to. I know that we have like a client dashboard that's custom built, and within there you can get your own referral link that has like your tracking code. And if someone signs up there, then it's automatically credited to your account.
Right.
I don't know if this link goes to that specific page or if it goes to a landing page talking about the offer.
Right.
But it's one of those two things there.
Right. So those are your options basically, or I mean, really any kind of system you come up with, but that makes sense to me too. Having a landing page that explains further instructions, maybe that gives you a little bit more context, and then shares that link that people can share around. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you don't have some kind of affiliate tracking system, I think the landing page would be just fine to explain the offer. Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, he says that he figured it'd be a landing page of some sort.
Cool.
Thanks again, John.
Another strategy here is to publish your feedback as testimonials. And this was a feature, I got this idea from this company called Get Kudos, and they actually went out of business, or they shut down, and it was publishing Zendesk feedback. This was like 5 years ago. And I just love that feature, and I have no idea why they closed down. And it's kind of like, I read this thing once where it's like every company has waste, and you should use waste to your advantage somehow. And I realized that our positive Zendesk comments were kind of just waste. It's like we weren't doing anything with it. You're just throwing it away.
Right.
And it's like you could use those comments, even like, so this is from, I took this screenshot today. Even if it's just a one-liner, it shows like how active our help desk is. And it's kind of like so informal that it doesn't need to be this curated special testimonial. You don't have to write a headline for the title of the testimonial. I'm sure you know about.
You're absolutely right. So I mean, this scratches a big itch of mine, and I mean, we just went through for anyone who's followed along on our blog. We just reviewed a bunch of MSP websites and picked out some really good ones doing some good things. But as part of that process, I mean, we reviewed a ton, and it's not having this sort of thing. The difference between having it and not having it is really huge from a prospect's perspective. And to your point, what I love about this is I think a lot of us, when we think about reviews, it's asking for something very polished. It becomes work for the referrer, for the client leaving the review, to, if they feel like they have to write something fancy that sounds great, and then we feel like we have to have it polished. Case studies even worse. I mean, there's something to be said for just having this. Like, people, the simple fact that they look at this and they kind of see like a shock and awe moment where like they see that there's a lot of good feedback. That's really you're getting to the same result as having some more polished, more stuff that's way more work intensive. So I love this as a very quick, easy way to accomplish the very same goal, which is you just want to show that people like your service.
Yeah. Basecamp.com, Basecamp's website, does like a really good job of this, and they just have like dozens or hundreds of testimonials that they just like, it's this wall that they just hit with. You like, here's how great we are. I think it's really powerful. The last kind of way that we use this, or that I recommend, is for getting customer stories or case studies. And case studies are really important kind of later on down the funnel when someone's considering. It's kind of like they're the things they want to see before they pull up their credit card and decide to buy, and when they're evaluating you against other competitors. And customer stories do take a little bit more work, and you want to choose to work with people that you know are going to say good things about you.
Right.
With Simplesat, we have a really good process now where in Intercom, we have this list of our promoters, so people who gave us a 9 out of 10. And I can go here now, and whenever we need to fill up our pipeline for customer stories, choose the people. And here's a template that I use where I want to ask for the customer story, include a $50 Amazon gift card. And I've had a really good response rate with this. And then I send them a short little questionnaire, and then our copywriter can turn that into a customer story. But all of this starts with knowing who our happy and positive customers are, and easily getting a list to send to them. And I can kind of pick and choose, here's someone from an industry we haven't done yet, or customer in a country we haven't done yet. So.
And you can tie that back to going back to one of your points at the top of the hour was at the right time too. So, I mean, doing this while they're thinking about you and initially after they've given you that good score. I see a lot of companies, I mean, the way that we've done it too is you kind of focus on who would be a good big customer to highlight. But you being able to qualify that with, okay, who's the biggest, but also the happiest, most active customer. I mean, that's a big thing. I know with MSPs, something that's kind of jumped out with me that it makes sense, but I was a little surprised to find, was some hesitation in terms of sharing clients, specifically because people don't want to produce, I guess, basically paint targets for anyone who's, especially with attackers now singling out MSPs and going after them. So there's some hesitation around this. I see kind of the pros and cons of that side. But I think it goes back into the just this point of, even if these are things that are you end up making it you're not actually naming their name, it's anonymous, but you say things like a top company in industry blank, but you still have the quote. There's ways you can work around that where you're still accomplishing basically the same effect.
And that's kind of it for taking advantage of those feedback and, for testimonials and stuff.
Yeah. And actually one question just for follow up. So we're going to be, we're going to be sharing the recording. We're going to be sharing the slides. In addition to these slides, I mean, you'll be able to see all the examples that Cory shared, but Cory, I was wondering if you had, in some of those cases, would you be able to share kind of like a higher res or larger versions of that? Some of those emails and things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, happy to.
I know everybody's interested in getting a template they can kind of crib from.
Yep, absolutely.
Very cool. So I'm going to go back. I mean, we answered a lot of questions kind of throughout. There's some lingering stuff. Christine asked about the kind of going back to that sys icon idea. And so, Christine, I'll follow up with you about that once I get some answers on our side. And then I still have Jeff's question open, Jeffrey's question about how to expand the feedback from the people who are just giving it to you consistently. Basically, like it kind of goes back to the feedback that I got from one of our larger MSPs who was saying making it more actionable, reducing the noise. I think a lot of people when they set something like this up, it does seem like it's easy to get caught in that loop of, okay, we have a bunch of kind of like pretty good feedback and it's from the same people over and over again. What are we actually doing with it? I mean, our whole discussion here has been how to address that, but any other kind of final tips, especially for people who are kind of just getting started on things?
Let's see. Some of our users have done campaigns where they send out an email to all clients to let them know that they're collecting feedback, and please share your thoughts. One of our users had this campaign where if you leave feedback, they donate $1 to charity.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was really, really creative. So, there, I guess you could just do some stuff about maybe changing how the survey is displayed in your ticket notification email, not just saying like, please rate us, like maybe a longer thing about just, I don't know, please rate us, but like good or bad, we're all ears. We really want to know. Please click something. I don't know. And that's kind of the point of making it fun too. And making
Right. Definitely. I mean, you could certainly work with you guys have done such an amazing job with the icons and everything, but then I really love, everybody on the webinar should go check out Simplesat's page to learn about the product, of course, but also just to check out the copy. I love your guys' copy. It's very clear. It's very short and punchy.
Thank you.
I like the way that you're writing about things. And so I think there's some lessons to be learned there too. It's a great tone. People want to, I think people are much more responsive to writing like a human being and having things be kind of short and just a little bit of surprising that it's not the same old standard stuff. So I think there is some additional results you can get from experimenting with that.
Yeah, it's like, here's an example of a live Simplesat survey, and most CSAT surveys and stuff will link basically to the first, when you click in the email, it's going to answer that first question, and then you're going to land on a page like this to do a follow-up comment. But you could, like, there's a question here from Christine about, linking in the doc. You could just link to this first question and show something like this. And kind of just about, I don't know, getting more feedback, you can kind of change how stuff was here, and kind of to your point, making the tone more natural and not being so kind of rigid about, please rate your experience with the technician, kind of say like, how do you feel today? Or I don't know, how are we doing?
Yeah. And the using the NPS format too. I mean, again, you're kind of getting away from, it's only going to be the people who are interacting with help desk, and it's only going to be in response directly to a ticket. All right. Well, if there's any other, I'll do a last call for questions. And while we're doing that, let's take a look at, actually, Cory, if you don't mind, that last slide, and we can direct people to where they can find out more. Kind of keep the discussion going. So you guys have a ton of resources actually on your site too. Some really great stuff. If you want to learn more about NPS, you have a great post that's all about the different types of scores, basically the differences between CSAT and NPS that we talked about here, but there's more information there, when to use them. A lot of really good stuff on your blog. I really like what you guys are doing there.
Thank you. Yeah, so all info's there on our website. Through our website or through our dashboard, you can chat with our team at any time. So, you can reach me or our support team, and then feel free to email me as well. From any questions about this webinar or anything else. And you can try Simplesat free, of course, for 30 days. So create an account, see if it works for you.
Yeah, and we already have at least one satisfied customer here that was saying hi with Isaac.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like I said, this is an area that we're hearing more and more feedback that people are looking for something like this, and just figuring out ways that they can delve into this area more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really glad you joined. One last note from the Ninja side of things. Anyone on the webinar who hasn't been aware that we have a newsletter out now, this is something that I put together every week. So every Monday I send out an email, and it's got 5 free tips, tools, resources. Basically, you get an email with 5 links to things that we found there. The whole focus is to make them actually practical and doable. And so it's something that you go into the week, you're like, here's 5 things I can potentially accomplish this week. And that's something that I put together and send out every Monday. So you can subscribe by clicking the link there. We're calling it MSP Bento. And these are things that some of the stuff that we're putting together on the Ninja side of things, but it's external resources as well. So we got lots of tips from, we're sharing PowerShell scripts, we're sharing good sales and marketing materials, all sorts of stuff. So if you haven't checked it out, please do.
I just subscribed 2 weeks ago, and I love it.
Yeah, definitely. I saw that. Thank you, Cory. And Cory, I'm actually going to be asking you if you would like to do a takeover and maybe curate one of our editions coming up.
I'd love to.
You're just being polite because we're live on the air and saying that.
I'd love to.
This is that's another way to get good feedback and get good answers, is to put people on the spot publicly.
Yeah. So you could send me a follow-up email later about how I really feel. So there could be two ways to engage with it. No,
cool.
I'd love to.
Cory, this is great. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for joining in too.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Just a quick reminder. We'll be following up with the slides and the recording to share that out. So you'll have that. And definitely reach out to Cory if you guys have any specific questions or want any other materials. He's a good guy.
Please do. Thank you. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. Thanks for everyone for joining.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone. And we'll, quick note about the next webinar. We're going to have another one in a month. We're still pinning down the topic, but we think it's going to be based around security once again, because it's a hot topic. So stay tuned for that. And thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. See you, Cory.